with regard to how it feels as though the climate crisis has slipped down the list of priorities for New Zealanders. I completely understand it. It's hard to care about the end of the world if you can't put food on the table for the end of the week. Could you be explicit with the committee about how, in the range of advice that you've given, particularly on environmental degradation and the climate space as well, I guess the cost of living impacts out into the future if climate change were to be unabated?
But that's actually a really quite difficult and I think somewhat contested element of policy, trying to reach a view around the extent to which you might look at that transition as an opportunity versus a cost. And it depends a lot on how global markets will develop, how technology may evolve. So it's actually quite difficult to, I think, reach a view around the balance of opportunity versus cost in that transition that people are aligned around, because it requires so much judgment and sort of assumption about how things in the future will unfold. It's a difficult area.
But acting early would be a good thing.
Well, that's the thing that's tricky to know, is you can spend or absorb cost in the short term with a view to reaping benefits down the line. The question is, at what point do you get the return and to what extent, and how do you trade that off against the potential costs in the short term?
The government's decisions around halving the biogenic methane target, right? So I guess just to lay a few things out for, say, the committee and a half dozen people who may be tuned into the live stream. Can I just confirm that only the lower bound of the range in the biogenic methane target is the one which is legally binding? So with the government resetting that to 14 to 24%, only that 14% is the legally binding?
It's a target.
Okay. I feel like we're broadly on the same page. Did MFE help write the Minister of Climate Change speech at COP30?
We would have provided material to the Minister's office, but the Minister's office would have ultimately written the speech.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell you sitting here today what specific parts of the speech we provided advice on. We could come back to the committee on that.
The only reason I asked that is because we have a situation where about 2 weeks ago, the Minister for Climate Change was on the international stage at COP30 saying, and I quote, "We must keep 1.5 alive, Mr. President, and New Zealand is committed." Meanwhile, he had knowingly made decisions per the cabinet paper, which you've taken the advice from the Independent Ministerial Working Group.
Point of order. Just reminding the member that we're in an annual review.
Yes.
COP30 was what, a few weeks ago?
Yes, that's right. So we do need to stick to the annual review and the report which we have here. So we are looking back at this. So so if we can just stick to that, and also obviously keep the questions within the topics that we've got here for the Ministry for the Environment.
As a result of government decisions that have been undertaken to halve the biogenic methane target, there could be costs that increases on businesses and households. There could be. I guess what I'm trying to get from you tangibly is, how do we know when that happens? Because I get your point around all of the uncertainty and the variables being what they are, but as public policy makers, you're providing this advice that costs could be displaced and increased for households and businesses based on a government decision made over here, and you're saying, well, it depends on what happens out here. So when do we know? Well,
we monitor our. I'm sure, as you're aware, we are monitoring our emissions track all the time, and we have an annual process for updating our projections, and we have a system in place to make a judgment around, or help provide advice to ministers as to when they might need to take additional steps to right the course, if you like. So it will become increasingly clear. Like there's a trait, as you know, the closer we get to the future, the more certain we are about it, but the less time we have to adjust. So that's a key judgment that you need to be constantly making. But we do have systems and processes in place to monitor and track and provide advice to ministers so they can make those decisions as to when, if necessary, they might need to look at additional steps and measures. I guess that's kind of but we're looking okay at the moment. The projections are okay.
We're just going to move. We're going to just move on to a couple of other steps on this because there are other members that want to ask questions.